morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Digital Futures of Work Conference. We'd invite you to take your seats, please. The conference will commence soon. Not at 850? Another 5 minutes? All right. The bell's rung and the doors are closing. So, can I invite you all to take your seats, please? Good morning. Good morning. How are you? So, good morning and welcome to this global conference on the digital futures of work. My name is Himanshu, and I will be your MC for today, which means my job is to herd the cats and make sure we are all on time through the day. Okay, so please help me with that. Thank you for arriving early at this conference. I want to start with a few housekeeping announcements. So the first is that you have a program schedule and you have the bios and all of that on your table. But if you wanted to get a digital copy, you can just scan the code at the back of your name card. Sorry. We're going to use Pigeonhole as the interactive platform. So it's up on the screen. There's a QR code there. You can also scan the QR code at the back of your badge. Do post questions along the way. There are going to be panel discussions, as you know. We'd be happy to take questions through Pigeonhole. Each of the panel discussants will have access to it, so they will read out your questions, and I'm sure the panelists will be happy to answer. If you need any assistance, there are a bunch of volunteers from IAL who are, with the red lanyards, so you can approach them, and I'm sure they will provide all help that is needed. Before we start, can I request all of us to switch off our mobile phones or put it at least on silent mode or however, so that we have your undivided attention today? And on behalf of the hosts, with the Institute of Adult Learning and the Cardiff University, thank you very much for joining us at this conference. This conference is being organized in partnership with the University of Bristol and SCOPE, which is the Center for Skills, Knowledge, and Organization Performance at the University of Oxford. And of course, it is supported by SkillsFuture Singapore. To all the delegates, the guests, the speakers, the panelists who are seated here, I know you've come from many parts of the world, across Europe, US, the UK, Indonesia, Vietnam, Japan, India, South Korea. So that's amazing. What an eclectic global gathering here. And then we have lots of others who are streaming in live. And I know they must be in all kinds of time zones. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of them, depending on where they are. So let me quickly introduce myself. As I said, my name is Himanshu. I'm a visiting faculty at the Singapore Management University and in the Indian School of Business. I also run my own augmented intelligence software product company. But as far as this research program goes, I've been associated with Phil, who I'll introduce in a minute, and the rest of the research team for about a year and a half now. Conducting the interviews, developing frameworks to be able to take this to industry and so on. And so for all of us, this is the culmination of a 3-4 year program. And we are very, very keen to share the findings from the research program. So what's this conference all about? And obviously, I think you will all agree that the topic of future of work in the context of digital is very pertinent, very, very topical for today. But really, what is it all about? The way I would summarize it and the way I understand it is, with the advance of the technology revolution and with the advance of advanced technologies and automation and AI and now generative AI, what is it really doing to the future of work in terms of how work is going to happen tomorrow, in terms of the human plus machine combination? What is it doing to workforces in terms of the skills that they're going to need? What is it doing to workplaces in terms of leadership and culture? And I dare say, what is it doing to work classes? As in, are the traditional definitions of the middle class, the higher classes, the working classes, is that changing as a result of the advance of these technologies? So not just the implication for organizations, but even the implications for policy, for government, for society at large, for humanity at large. And I think this program, unlike many others, has dwelled deep into these topics. And some of the findings are controversial. We're going to present it through a set of 4 speakers and panel discussions. But it gets into questions like, for example, is AI really going to create better jobs for all? That's a question that we're going to pose. Another question is, really what are the skills and knowledge that will be required by people to adapt to this new world of work? What does human centricity actually mean? I know we use that word quite often. People have talked a lot about customer centricity, but what does human centricity mean? That's yet another question. And then, as policymakers, what are the policy options you have to actually create a society that is inclusive, that is just, that is fair, that works for everybody? So these are just some of the questions. I don't want to steal the thunder from the speakers, so I'll sort of just leave you with those fairly deep, profound questions. But let's formally begin the conference, and we'll do that with a welcome address by Professor Tan Tai Yong, President, Singapore University of Social Sciences. Professor Tan.
His Excellency Ambassador Juha Makinen, Ambassador of Finland to Singapore, Ms. Jenny Ijemark, Counselor and Deputy Head of Mission, Embassy of Sweden in Singapore, Mr. Tan Kok Yam, Chief Executive, SkillsFuture, Singapore, and Council Chairman for the Institute of Adult Learning, distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends. A good morning and a very warm welcome to the Digital Futures of Work Global Conference. This conference brings together key societal leaders from Singapore and around the world to exchange ideas and insights on a topic of significant interest to all of us, the future of work, education, and social inclusion in an age of artificial intelligence. We find ourselves in a rather unique situation these days, marked by the emergence of generative AI. Its ability to create, innovate, and understand content in a human-like manner brings to the forefront public discussions on the power of AI technologies to redefine the world. There is wide anticipation that AI technologies will bring dramatic changes and disruptions to industries, jobs, and occupations. And it's not just the technical possibilities that should be of interest to us. Equally important are the profound societal transformations that will accompany AI. Himashul alluded to several of them this morning. It is a global endeavor that is not limited to one country, but to the whole world. And we must collaboratively facilitate a transition to an AI-driven economy that is productive, inclusive, and equitable. We are gathered especially to discuss the findings from a 4-year collaborative research program, the Digital Futures of Work. Supported by SkillsFuture Singapore, this research program brings 4 universities in close collaboration to study the impact of AI technologies on work, skills, and education at a global scale, and is jointly hosted by Cardiff University and the Institute for Adult Learning, IAL, an autonomous institute of the Singapore University of Social Sciences. The University of Bristol and the University of Oxford's Centre on Skills, Knowledge and Organizational Performance are our esteemed program partners. This research program took place between September 2019 and August 2023, so needless to say, disrupted by the COVID pandemic. But it saw the program bring together 20 social scientists to conduct a systematic mixed method investigation on the direction of AI innovation and the future of work skills and education across more than 10 digital hubs, including Singapore, Silicon Valley, Seoul, and Helsinki. The researchers reached out to people who are closest to the ground regarding AI: business leaders, technology consultants, AI scientists, and professionals. More than 500 leading players provided in-depth analysis and insights to the research team. Additionally, quantitative analysis, including the use of big data, were undertaken. I'm confident that the research findings we will discuss today will introduce interesting and thought-provoking perspectives that merit further examination and debate. It is through such discussions and exchange of ideas that we can forge the most effective strategies and policies to harness AI's potential while mitigating its potential pitfalls. About 250 distinguished speakers, panelists, and delegates from the business, technology, education, research, policy, and social sectors are participating in person at today's conference to discuss the findings. They include participants who have traveled from 10 countries, including Australia, Brunei, Finland, Indonesia, India, Japan, South Korea, the UK, the US, and Vietnam. And they are here with us, all of you, in person today. Many more will be joining us virtually, including 3 panel speakers dialing in from Germany, Sweden, and Switzerland later this afternoon. The resounding commitment from both our local and global communities to engage in this dialogue serves as a testament to the paramount importance of today's topic and underscores the importance of enabling people to meet in physical environments such as this to steer our future collectively. In closing, I would like to thank my counterparts from Cardiff University, University of Bristol, and the University of Oxford for the partnership over the past 4 years. In particular, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to the dedication of the multi-university research team led by Professor Phillip Brown from Cardiff University. And I would also like to thank SkillsFuture Singapore for supporting this endeavor. As Singapore's national agency enabling lifelong learning, we hope the study will provide new insights to support Singapore's directions in AI education for a future-ready Singapore. I wish each of you an enriching exchange, and may the conversations here guide us towards a future where AI, work, and education are harnessed productively for the benefit of everyone. Thank you.
All right. Sorry, I make amends for a small mistake that I made earlier. I didn't acknowledge the presence of Your Excellency Juha Markkanen, head of the mission for Finland in Singapore, Jenny Egermark, again, the deputy head of the mission here from Sweden, the chief executive of SSG, Mr. Tan Kak Kiam, and Professor Tan Tai Yong. Now, the next is remarks by Professor Wendy Larner, the Vice-Chancellor of Cardiff University. She is joining us live and through a recorded message. So can we see that, please?
Warida. I'm Professor Wendy Larner, the new Vice-Chancellor of Cardiff University. I'm very pleased to offer a few words of welcome for this important conference. Cardiff University is a public research university in the heart of the capital city of Wales. It was established in 1883 and has over 34,000 students and is a member of the research-intensive Russell Group of UK universities. We are delighted to have taken a major role in this international research program. We value the collaboration with Singapore University of Social Sciences and our long-standing association with the Institute of Adult Learning. We also value the foresight shown by SkillsFuture Singapore to fund this research, aimed at understanding the international context of the digital futures of work beyond Singapore. This foresight has been rewarded as this conference couldn't be more timely, as the full impact of recent advances in AI and related technologies are recognised. A major theme of the report being published today is why we need to challenge established ways of thinking about the fourth industrial revolution and its implications for education, work and labour markets. There are real opportunities to use these technologies for the public good, but there are also significant challenges. We in higher education have a key role to play in finding innovative ways of augmenting human capabilities, increasing social inclusion, and delivering a shared sustainable prosperity. Today's report offers some interesting ideas on how this can be achieved, which I know you're going to be discussing at this conference. Although sadly I'm unable to be with you in person, Cardiff University is looking forward to being part of future research and related collaborations. I wish you all the best for the conference and the discussions you're going to have ahead.
Thank you, Professor Larner. And let us now welcome Mr. Tan Kok Yam, Chief Executive of SkillsFuture Singapore and the Chairman of the Institute of Adult Learning, to deliver his address.
His Excellency, Ambassador Juha Makinen, Ambassador of Finland to Singapore, Ms. Jenny Egemark, Counselor and Deputy Head of Mission, Embassy of Sweden, Professor Tan Yong, President, Singapore University of Social Sciences, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to join all of you here this morning. In 2019, a team of 20 social scientists, co-led by Cardiff University and the Singapore University of Social Sciences through the Institute for Adult Learning, began an ambitious study to better understand how, across the globe, artificial intelligence, or AI, has impacted and will impact jobs. The team drew on data from more than 500 interviews and from more than 10 different countries to conduct in-depth quantitative analysis. 4 years on, this intensive study has catalyzed today's event, the Digital Futures of Work Global Conference. I'm thankful for all your involvement in this dialogue because it is and will be an extremely important and timely dialogue. The scenario before us is unprecedented, and I say so for 3 reasons. First, the scenario is unprecedented in impact. Modern history is full of examples of how technology, especially those that affect automation, improves the lot of not just the user, the consumer, but also that of the worker. Women's participation in the workforce became a reality only after the introduction of household automation, which reduced the time needed for chores in the home. It was the washing machine that took away the many hours for laundry. Certainly the husbands did not collectively wake up one day and decided that they too should help in washing and drying. Spreadsheets and calculators removed the need for armies of data entry clerks, usually women, and enabled them to move to higher value office work. A long time ago, in this part of the world, it was simple, affordable home sanitation that replaced the need for night soil workers with the need for skilled plumbing. AI, however, is somewhat different from these examples because it does not obviously remove bad, undesirable jobs that are held by an existing prevailing underclass of laborers. As the study itself points out, highly desirable jobs like consulting and marketing are being captured. As an optimist, I am confident that AI will improve the quality of work over time, like the technologies that had come before it. But I also think we will need to be more deliberate in steering society and economy to that outcome. Second, the scenario is unprecedented in its pace of change. AI is strictly not a new technology, but it might as well be every time it is discussed. IBM Deep Blue, if for those who can remember, beat Kasparov in chess in 1997, Chess is a hard game. It's a game with about 400 possible next moves. After every move, 400 possible next moves. Barely 20 years later, AlphaGo beat Lee, and Go is a game not with 400, but with 130,000 possible next moves. After every move, 130,000 possible next moves. The speed of computational advancement is staggering, unrelenting. We should not have been surprised at the advent of large language models, or LLM. Individuals, companies, and governments will need to adjust to this pace of change, this more dynamic reality. Third, the scenario facing us is unprecedented in scope. I think not a single industry today would dare say that its business is unaffected by AI. In the space of adult education, which many of us here are familiar with, we can try this. Take pictures of a few pages of a book on any subject, digital marketing, pet grooming if you like. Ask the LLM to summarize the content, build a syllabus adopting a pedagogical framework of your choice, use some software to convert that content into a podcast, a PowerPoint deck, and while you're at it, you might as well ask for a set of test questions. A LinkedIn connection of mine said he could do this in 8 minutes with some trial and error. Would this be the best training material? It depends on the book, I guess. Would human educators and curriculum developers be unnecessary in adult education? Not at all. Would it change what they do? Definitely. So we face a scenario that is unprecedented in its impact, in its pace, and in its scope. But two things are clear. First, as machines learn, humans will need to learn too, including and especially existing workers. How do we acquire that intangible ability in our respective professions to discern and assess quality among the myriad outputs that AI can churn out at you? How to deal with the challenges of implementation, data management, change management, etc. And how do we deal with the new problems and concerns that need to be addressed, say in regulation or in human-machine interfacing? These are but a subset of the new skills our workforce will have to acquire. In Singapore, under the SkillsFuture movement, we are committed to a collective national approach to help all our workers learn. Second, we need a global dialogue and exchange of views. Global not just in terms of it being cross-national, but also cross-disciplinary and cross-industry. 2 days ago, President Tharman at the SkillsFuture event spoke about the 3 objectives for lifelong learning: to deal with continuous change in technology, to enable a meaningful working life even as that working life lengthens in an aging workforce, and to build a culture where we advance together as a society. Today, when we speak about AI and its impact on jobs, all 3 objectives are at play. And we will need a breadth of perspectives: technologist, educator, employer, employee, unionist, researcher, practitioner, to come together to do the subject justice. Therefore, I'm truly thankful for today's event. I once again commend the stewardship of Professor Phillip Brown of Cardiff and the hard work of the 20-strong research team that has enabled the dialogue today. Alongside the joint leadership of Cardiff and SUSSIAL, the University of Bristol and Oxford University's Centre on Skills, Knowledge and Organizational Performance have contributed invaluably as program partners. I also thank the panelists and participants, you, for your commitment to be part of this global dialogue. We are honored to have among us our 3 diplomatic representatives from Finland, Sweden, and South Korea, and we certainly look forward to deepening our mutual cooperation and exchange in this space. Finally, I wish all of you a rich, meaningful exchange today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tan. Thank you especially for highlighting the need for a multi-stakeholder, a multifunctional, and a multi-pronged approach to this very crucial issue. We can now begin with the conference proper, with our first presentation of the day. Let's welcome Professor Phillip Brown, Distinguished Research Professor at the Cardiff University and the Director of the Digital Futures of Work Research Program. He's going to talk about the research team's findings at a high level of what the future of work will look like, and crucially, where the opportunities and the challenges lie. Professor.
It's a great pleasure to be here. It's been a long road in the last 4 years, which I will explain a little more in a moment. But I just obviously want to thank SkillsFuture Singapore for funding this program. Not an easy one to fund, I think, 4 years ago, but I must say, we hope you'll find it worthwhile to actually make that investment. Also, the Singapore University of Social Sciences, thank you very much for hosting this through the Institute of Adult Learning. I mean, a great team, and it's been a really, really very positive experience with 20 researchers working on this. And I must say that I'm coming to the end of my academic career, but this has probably been the most exciting and interesting project I've ever been involved in. So that's kind of great. But what I want to do is just provide, if you like, a general picture of our kind of findings to set up the day, if you like. So this is a very general overview. And of course, what happened when we began was to imagine that we were going to be able to do our research across a number of countries, and that this would be a very smooth operation. And of course, within months, COVID hit. So we saw the race to online, and both in terms of education and in terms of work. And we also saw the ways in which companies started to restructure their value chains, knowing that they couldn't carry on as they were before. After that, we started to engage in our field work, and then we had ChatGPT. We thought we knew what our research was telling us. We thought it was a fairly slow process of change, and in fact, what of course has happened now has changed the game, I think, quite fundamentally. And alongside that, of course, we've seen shifts in geopolitics, and also concerns about climate change, which really is giving us a very uncertain sense of where we are and an uncertain sense of future. And so in a way, what we want to do is think, well, how does this begin to shape our understanding of the fourth industrial revolution? We've had a dialogue about this, which has sort of assumed that everything would be all right in the end, as it always has been. And the jobs and the technologies would work together, and we would have a better future. We hope that's the case. But as has already been stated, we have to engineer it. Yeah? So I'm not going to dwell, obviously, on the sorts of things you see on the screen here, because it's so well known. I was a skeptic of the fourth industrial revolution for a very long time. But I think the generative AI is, I don't know if it's a game changer, but it's accelerated so many of the trends that we were beginning to see, the technologies, and the way in which those technologies come together. So I think we are looking at something quite different from what we had kind of before. But I want to also add that all industrial revolutions to date, the DNA is capitalism. It's a market system. And it's always shaped by that market system. And we should not lose sight of that, of how the technologies are interrelated to basically the market system. And also that reminds us that the technology is not destiny. We have choices about how those technologies are going to be used. And what we want to argue particularly is that what we have maybe today is an age of unraveling, an age of unbundling, and also an age of recombination in relation to the technologies. So how we recombine in terms of the way in which we work, the way in which we live our lives, in relation to those technologies, is going to be very, very important. And one area, of course, of unbundling and unravelling that is of particular interest to us is the whole question of social mobility, opportunity, and the middle classes, which is where the new jobs were supposed to basically come from. To what extent are we seeing those trends that we assumed, or are we seeing something different? And the stakes here are very, very high, as we know. The stakes, in a sense, can't be higher. We've seen too much around the world already to understand that social inclusion, a sense of cohesion, is going to be really, really important as we move forward. So these issues are absolutely central to how we move forward. And we can see straight away that we've got these questions around, for example, the middle classes, about how the middle class has been kind of restructured. And of course, there's questions about what do we mean by the middle class. But basically, what some of the evidence shows already is that when you look at basically middle earners, so those between 75% and 150% of earnings, then what you see from that is that more and more graduates are in that category. And you see this in different countries. So, for example, the US data, you see a shift from 10% in 2001 to basically 35% in 2021. And you see the same kinds of patterns in other countries as well. In Singapore, we don't have the same time frame, but you already see evidence of similar kinds of patterns. Perhaps the outstanding one is actually the UK, where you see the shift actually from 19% to 47% of middle earners then basically being graduates. So it's this kind of evidence that made us think what we really need to do is to, I'm going to shift, I think, to this. Can I shift to the microphone? Hello? Yeah. Okay. So what we decided to do was we need to go out and we need to talk to people. Talking to people is really undervalued. And it's those kind of interviews with senior people who are at the forefront of the changes in the world economy. Talking to those people, that is the key thing, really, that we need to do. And so we had incredible buy-in from a lot of the global leading companies, as well as SMEs, to help us to understand this. All our interviews are confidential. And we find that that helps enormously. I'm not going to go into details about this because you've got the information anyway, and it's on the website. But just to say that we also wanted to make sure we used a combination of methods, including big data, which we've used, to try to see how can we use the technologies to understand the technologies. And that work is obviously ongoing. So what then are our key sort of findings? What do we want to really explore with you and explore today? The first one is very, very easy to deal with, which is there was a lot of discussion around the start of our program suggesting that we were entering a period of mass technological unemployment. And we all saw those kind of figures being publicized. We could find no evidence for that at all. Actually, if you look at the UK data on working hours for everybody, it's not changed at all over 25 years. The only time it changed was during COVID. It dropped and then almost immediately picked up again, and then has carried on. So there's very little evidence for that. Another one that's really important is the hollowing out of the middle. Now, this is an important argument because the hollowing out of the middle was the idea that actually that middle-level jobs, because of new technologies, would go in sort of two ways. They'd become, so some people would end up in elementary jobs, a small proportion. Most people would retrain into more high-skilled work. So the middle was hollowed out. we find absolutely the opposite of that argument, which I'll go on to explain in a moment. The third one is that basically technology is skill biased. In other words, that as new technology is introduced, elementary jobs disappear, better quality jobs are created, so the pattern of social mobility is driven by the technology. And of course, that we would want to question, because we don't find evidence for it. We find evidence for something that's actually quite different from that. What we find is that it's possible to use the technologies. And I think we need to be careful that we're not talking about just technologies. We're talking about how businesses organize themselves. What's the purpose of the business? So I think that that is also a very important aspect. So it's what we do with the technologies that matters, not just whether the technologies exist. So it's that re-stratification, if you like, of knowledge forms of work, which we want to highlight. So the basic story here is there are two kind of views. So to what extent are we entering a future which is based on labor scarcity? In other words, the view that good and better jobs will be created by new technologies, and that the major problem is one of alignment. We need to align the workforce to this changing, rising demand for skilled sort of labor. That's on the left side. The alternative is job scarcity, where the problem is, are the technologies being used by companies in ways which actually de-skill or eliminate some of the professional, managerial, technical areas of work? So are we seeing the opposite trend taking place? And if it is, then our major problem is actually a structural problem. It's a structural problem around the nature of work. It's a problem around the nature of demand. And that takes us into a different policy arena. It makes us rethink most of our assumptions about what we're trading for, about how the labor market operates, about how employers now need to basically engage to create a different outcome to what this possibly might be. And these arguments are really based, as I say, around a very large number of interviews. And when we were doing these interviews, as I say, they're confidential. So first of all, most people we speak to, they start with saying, oh yeah, things will be kind of all right in the future. And then you push them a bit. And then you get a different sort of story starts to emerge. And one of the stories that emerges is not that companies want to eliminate labor. More importantly, they want to do more with less. So they're not going to expand their workforce. There was no real evidence of companies saying, yeah, we need more high-skilled workers. You know, we're desperate for this. And I mean, there are companies like that, and it's genuine. But the overall pattern is one where they want to do more with less labor, and more high-skilled labor, because high-skilled labor is expensive. So where are you going to cut your costs? If you're into a cost efficiency model, you're going to do it through actually trying to reduce the cost of your high-wage labor. And you can see from these examples, I particularly like the last one, where actually the emphasis here, of course, is on AI. And it's about using co-pilots. And if we can use co-pilots, we can be much, much more efficient. And then, in a sense, we don't, and on this particular example, we can sort of help to resolve our talent issues through basically the use of the technology. Well, that's one way you can use the technology, that's for sure. But maybe not the one that we would want to particularly encourage. And also, you see here the ways in which the companies are not starting from the bottom. I mean, I think this is one of the basic stories. The idea that technology attacks from the bottom up, right? But this technology attacks from the top down. In fact, it doesn't really impact at the bottom end particularly. There are other technologies working there, but it's really the generative AI in particular, early days, but what we're seeing there is the way in which those technologies are really starting to be experimented with by companies in terms of rethinking how we're productive, how we're competitive, how we make kind of profit. So I think that this attack from the top down is a very interesting one, and we need to explore it. I mean, we've done a lot of work on this, but it's only we're a year in. You know, we're not even a year into generative AI, so we need to see where does this move to. What are the real implications of this? When the workforce has kind of co-pilots, what will actually, how will they really be used? Nobody knows. Anybody who thinks they can predict all this, sorry, don't agree with them. It's not, you can't. You've got to really get out there and really do the work and try and understand what's going on. So what we're basically arguing is that to what extent are we seeing what we call cognitive capture here? Or you know, I like strapline. So taking the thinking out of thinking. So to what extent can the technology capture those cognitive aspects of what we do? You know, the bits, in this sense, can it capture the bits we really enjoy? Because that's what we're talking about, isn't it? I mean, that's where we get our pleasure from. We get our pleasure from when we're actually engaged in complex things. If those complex things are then captured in the technology, one, it's not much fun. Two, it means that the value of your labor then is likely to decline. So I think there's some important issues here about exploring the nature of how knowledge forms of work can be automated, standardized, and also distributed internationally. So what we see evidence of is platforms, you know, just-in-time platforms of one form or another, that they are increasingly being used for high-skilled work rather than low. I mean, they're still being used for low-skilled work as well, but more of their activity is actually in high-skilled labor. And we can look at some evidence from Singapore, and this is before ChatGPT, from the Skills and Learning Survey. I think this is really interesting because if you think about digital, so this is a survey which is across the whole workforce, from those 25 to 65, I think it was. And if you look at AI exposure, then you see most of the exposure was perceived by people working as managers or as professionals, but not in really other forms of work. So the exposure was very much concentrated in the professional areas. And if you look at complex work there, you can see it's very similar. And then if you benchmark the managers against the professionals and other workers, what you actually see is that in terms of job loss, there's no real difference. In terms of job gain, then the managers kind of thought they seemed to be in a better position than those in professional roles or other workers. And the one that stands out in a way is task discretion, where the professionals really felt that their task discretion was declining along with other workers as well. And also that the professionals thought that were more likely to think that their jobs could be done remotely, which I think is actually quite interesting. So to emphasize the points we've made so far, I mean, basically what we can see is that routine jobs are not disappearing, because we assume they would disappear in many respects. They're not disappearing. And the technology, as we said, is attacking at the upper end, and this is supported by other research as well as what we are currently doing. So, where does that take us? So if this is the start of a new reality, then what are the possibilities? Because on the right-hand side here, in terms of demand, to what extent can we move that curve up? It doesn't necessarily mean that that is going to be the pattern, the predicted pattern of the future. We can move it. There are ways in which we can do that. And so that made us kind of seek out, it's fair to say we did seek out companies that were doing things differently. And what we emphasize here is the human-centric forms of organization which are out there that want to do things differently, that recognize humans as a differentiator, and recognize if everybody's got the technology, what's your competitive advantage? People. That is the source of competitive advantage. And there's other companies that say, well, no, we start with people, and we see how the technologies can then be used to enhance their productivity, but we start with the people. And I think that was something that we really were interested in. And the next session is actually on this very topic about human-centric organizations, because we think it's so kind of important, and we need to explore both what is now happening, but also how do we encourage more companies to move in that kind of direction, which is a key question. I'm very aware of the time, so I'm just going to speed up a little bit. In terms of education, a key question is how do we balance human growth and opportunities for human growth with industrial demands for a job-ready workforce? What does this sort of look like? And what we argue for is a growth model rather than a banking model of accumulation of skills. Now, we can have that discussion. We will have that discussion this afternoon. But it seems to us that keeping things together at the individual level, so the capabilities alongside the detailed skills that you need, is actually really important. And here, what we have in mind is this. So when we talk about knowing and doing, you often talk about basically head and hand, don't you? And head and hand is for different kinds of work. It's vocational or it's academic. Absolutely not. The key message is that we have to integrate the knowing, the doing, and the connecting together and across organizations if we are going to use the technologies in an effective way. If we don't, the technologies will eat away at the knowledge and skills. The technologies will eat away at doing. The technologies are already destroying connecting. We are being fundamentally disconnected from each other. Think about what you do when you go shopping now, or whatever you do. You go online. We are being fundamentally disconnected in virtually all areas of our life. If we allow the educational system to actually reproduce that, we are in trouble. So it's how we bring these things together which is actually the most important thing. So we'll be talking about this afternoon, and for me, this is a key question of how do we experiment with the technologies, with the AI now, and how do we experiment with them in a way which allow this to stay integrated, but also be meaningful in terms of labour market? Because it's not, yes, it is about life, but it's also about work, and that remains really, really important. So there are basically key policy challenges, obviously. One of the most fundamental, I think, is that it's not a question of understanding the technologies so that we can respond effectively to them. The fundamental challenge is how do we shape the technologies in a broader sense of human and social purpose, which makes it work for all of us, which is inclusive. That's the most important thing. That's the key one, I think. So how do we do this? And we know that there are important national differences. There are important comparative differences in how these things are worked out. And that's something we'll also be exploring this afternoon. So we need to keep a very close eye on that one, I think, because there's a tendency for a lot of us to write as if, how do we respond to the technologies? But my thing, how do we change companies? How do we change the economy to use those technologies in ways which are human kind of centric. So we'll be talking about these things this afternoon, and I've got 22 seconds left, but I want to make sure. It's great having this here because I'm terrible at carrying on. But I want to get this one in. Yeah, and this one I think is terribly important because the human-centric thing, as we've just said, it's not the icing on the cake. It is, or the cherry on the cake. It is the cake. I mean, the economy is there for human purpose, and we often forget that because we talk about the language, we talk about markets, we talk about being high skilled, we talk about being talent, but we don't talk about what we really do and what we really do contributes to society. We've lost the vocabulary. As a society, we've lost the vocabulary to talk to each other about what we contribute. We've lost it. We need to bring that. Oh, we don't need that. We need to bring that back. So also, these two images. Obviously, autonomous taxi in San Francisco. Below it is a picture that we took in San Francisco. Sorry? Oh, sorry. Oh, apologies. I'll bring the microphone back up again. Sorry. It's the autonomous taxi in San Francisco, and also we took this picture outside Macy's. The number of homeless people is unbelievable. That's a homeless person in the right-hand corner there. And what it reminds us of is this is the land of technological possibility. But what about the social aspects of this? So what is technologically possible is not necessarily socially desirable. So how do we bring those two things kind of together? And finally, if we, like this venture capitalist, also in San Francisco, that we were talking to, he was saying the thing is, we always think that technology can basically solve everything. And as he says at the end there, let's not get it broken, because the unintended consequences can be catastrophic. So I think that's pretty much what I want to say. So it's a very general overview of where we are, but I hope you get a sense of what it is that we've been about and what we're thinking about, and how some of these ideas can be taken forward, because it is really the beginning and not the end. I mean, it's the end of our program, but it's the beginning in many ways of really working through what's going on. So the next one is on human centricity, then lifelong learning, and then the policy framing at the end. So we hope we have a very enjoyable and constructive and thought-provoking day. Thank you.
So, Professor, thank you so much. Thank you for that very impassioned speech. Please take a seat because we'll start the panel discussion very soon. I'd like to invite the rest of the panelists up on stage. Gavin Chua. Where are you? Oh, yeah, there you go. Very nice. Gavin Chua is the Vice Chair of SG Tech Council in Singapore. Min Le is the Chief Customer Officer of Phillip.ai in Vietnam. And we also have Shravani Dandu. I think Shravani is joined. Okay, very good. She is in the US, in the West Coast. She's a machine learning scientist at Comcast Labs. She'll be joining us remotely. Thank you, Shravani. And I'm also one of the panelists, but I'll use this opportunity to be a discussant and to drive the discussions in this panel. Okay? Very good. So maybe we should. Is it working? Hello. Yeah. So let's begin with you, Shravani. Since you're remote and since you're the only lady on the panel, I think I'll start with you. You probably heard Professor Phil Brown speaking about a number of themes. One of the important themes he talked about was this time it's different. As in, there's ever since the Industrial Revolution 1 all the way through to Industrial Revolution 4. There's a bunch of things that have been happening in terms of how it impacts workforces. In fact, there's a researcher who's talked about how this time around, high-skill occupations are getting the most exposed to AI. This is also the finding of our study here. Do you agree that this time it is very different? If so, why? If not, why?
Good morning, Himanshu. I'm glad to join. Well, the area of machine learning and deep learning has really took off in, I would say, 2021 and 2022. That's how. And I think before 2017 there is one story, and after 2017 it's another, because the main challenge back then was how we can understand and think like a human, and how we can replicate the same in computers. And in introduction of LLMs and generative AI have really changed the scenario. And keep in mind, all of this is exposed to researchers at some level, and the introduction of ChatGPT has completely disrupted the whole AI scene altogether. Now it's more accessible to everybody. Everybody can use it right now. And if I would say it's in my engineering mind, it's like an impulse, like it's like 0 to 1 really quick. And we're all trying to adapt to this disruption and also learning. And then everyone is thinking how we can and where we can go from here. So it's quite new, and it's also common that we panic when some kind of disruption like this occurs, disrupting our everyday life. And here, from where I live and work, I'm at the heart of Silicon Valley, and generative AI is all we talk. You meet people, and then they're like, how ChatGPT is being used in their day-to-day work, how they're leveraging it to complete their masters or undergraduate programs in their education, and how people have lost jobs or gained jobs because of generative AI. So, and I kind of agree a little bit with previous speakers, where as with ChatGPT and generative AI, the number of engineers that you need to get a task done has reduced. Before, if you need 5 software engineers, now you need 4, because you can automate most of the things which the 5th software engineer is doing. And also it also affected, keep in mind, AI has this LLM has been integrated into day-to-day applications that we use, like Word, Microsoft Excel. And if you have a job which requires reporting on Excel, now you have to learn how to use these AI tools on Excel, so you can do your job faster. So the learning curve has increased for everybody. And with respect to coding, we have Copilot as an example, which help you augment coding, and it makes a good engineer a better engineer. So in that way, it has so many promises. And also keep in mind, I have worked quite extensively in LLMs, and it comes with like big promises, like sky is the limit, you can think of anything. But the reality of implementing it comes with a lot of challenges also. First of all, not just skills that engineers have to learn, but also the hardware that you need to implement some of the ideas that you have, and also seamlessly operationalizing it end to end, from adoption to how you can drive customer experience and then turn it into a good ROI. And so everybody's here scrambling what we can do with this AI. Is it the debate? I think it's going to exist even in the next 3 to 5 years. But realistically, adopting AI to augment whatever you're doing is a good way to go. And if you want to win, that is how you have to play the game at this point. And also, if you think about it, it it causes a concern for the loss of jobs. But if you are a little bit creative, you have an idea, you can leverage LLMs, open source LLMs that you have, and make it into a money earning business. It's, for example, for example, if you want to write reviews and you don't even know English, you can prompt your chat GPT to give you a good a flowery paragraph to post somewhere. So you're generating content with your idea, and then with posting it on right websites will earn you money. So it's like so you don't need a master's degree or a PhD to do that. It just
Yeah.
some time and
Yeah.
and
No,
um,
it's
and
sorry. Wait. Please
challenge.
go ahead. Please go ahead. Were you saying something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think, Shravani, what you're saying really, and the way I understood it is, for the first time probably, it's getting truly democratized. A combination of the fact that the natural interfaces, now you can talk to the machine in English language, or just normal, any language for that matter, and the fact that there are new reasoning logics that are available, has truly put technology in the hands of every single person, or has the potential to do it in the future. Of course, it comes with its
Yes.
problems and its downsides as well. Thank you very much, Shravani. That's very helpful. I'm going to sort of move the discussion to the other big theme that Phil talked about, which was the whole thing around skills restratification. Now, it's a fairly big word, but Gavin, this question is to you. There is cautious optimism right now about how this will impact jobs, which jobs will get more skilled, which jobs are going to get less skilled or de-skilled. Um, I guess the jury is still out in terms of how it's going to happen. But as an organization, as an education institution, um, how should one respond to this? Or to use Phil's word, how should one shape this to assure, things like fairness, social mobility, things like that are actually addressed? What's your thought on that, Gavin?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Can you hear me? The mic is working? Great. Um, the last time I met with Prof. Brown, it was at Botanic Gardens. You should all try it, having a conversation about digital futures of work at the Botanic Gardens. And maybe not right here, like it's not exactly, try it. I'm here today, maybe just representing SG Tech. We're quite especially for overseas delegates, we're 40 plus year old trade association representing tech companies in Singapore. And to address the question of re-stratification, I think this is a problem statement that is near and dear to SG Tech. And we're not working in an echo chamber, as Prof. Brown would recognize that we constantly over the last few years, actually even before ChatGPT came about, and I make sure to bring my pencil and notepad, by the way. This is not ChatGPT talking this morning. Thank you for whoever provided this on our tables. But it has been an ongoing dialogue with government agencies, SkillsFuture Singapore included, with academia, institutes of higher learning. You will get to hear from a rep from the Ministry of Education later today. So here, addressing really a problem statement we've been looking at for the past few years on stratification. So bottom line, stratification is real. It's real. Let's confront that. It's real. And in sharing this perspective is, I think, maybe take a step back. What is the role of a tech trade association in this process of addressing this problem? And I think a telltale sign is this, and again, a question for overseas delegates looking at your own countries that you help govern. The situation right now is many companies are scrambling, not just consumers that you and I alike. Right? Since the advent of generative AI, ChatGPT, you've come into very interesting use cases like a company whom I shall not name in Asia, uploading basically company secrets onto ChatGPT to ask for answers. Can you imagine that? And if you talk about tech unemployment, that's the quickest way, right? You lose your job. And I think a better way to look at this is is something to share what is the Singapore intervention, right, in this process. So in the same year where government commissioned this study for the digital futures of work, the Singapore government also launched the model framework on AI governance. So the governance trajectory was set in terms of a thought leadership coming from a country as early as 2019. And then thereafter, I think it's not just about governance. It's about looking at the skills that small and medium enterprises, startups, not just the big ones, are falling short, right? As recent as just yesterday, there's a lot of action going on right now, and don't feel that you're experiencing FOMO because you're not at Bletchley Park today, or some of you are taking a flight out there later today. Don't feel you're missing out, because yesterday the Deputy Prime Minister Heng Swee Keat of Singapore announced a sandbox that will be launched in January next year, and this is just to address startups and SMEs to help them experience what generative AI would mean to their enterprises. That is key, right? Giving them the exposure of what this is about. And maybe just the other side of addressing the skills gaps, the stratification, is working closely with these companies that need help to help them to understand, hey, what are the skills out there in terms of generative AI? So one way of framing this is looking at one of your key findings of knowing, doing, connecting. At the industry level for tech, the other way of reframing KDC, as I call it, right, is articulating what the skill sets are required out there for Gen AI. That's articulating as part of knowing. And then the doing part is aggregating, right? So aggregating, in this case, we've worked closely with 30 companies, right? Google, Microsoft are on board, not just them, but the startups, SMEs, 30 companies. SG Tech has aggregated them and allowing them to share their needs on Gen AI jobs, right? That's aggregating, that's doing. Connecting at the industry level is talking about recognition. It's about making sure that these skills are certified, they are accredited, right? This working with the education institutes, making sure that for those who get trained, get certified to get jobs, right? So that's one way of reframing the intervention. So maybe I'll stop here.
Wonderful. Phil, would you have anything to contribute on the skill stratification debate?
No, the only point I was going to make, and because I didn't really make it, I think effectively earlier, was just how do we build job quality at all levels? Because if that middle is changing, right, in terms of who's there and the way they're qualified and the kind of skill sets they might have, how do we ensure they have those quality jobs in relation to these technologies? And how do we ensure that we don't just unbundle? So at the task level in terms of skills. So we have, we are constituted by a portfolio of skills. I don't think that's a human being. It's because and then you say, well, I'm a load of different skills. I can identify those, and I can bring them together in different ways for you, depending on what you need. No, that's not where we start. We start with a set of basic capabilities of a human being, both in terms of their work and beyond work. And then we think, how do those technologies link to those? I think that's very important. But it is about that job quality question, correct, I think.
Correct.
At all levels now, which I think we need to
yeah. So I think the larger point being that, for a long time we've all focused on the supply side, which is how do you improve skills, how do you train more, and so on. It's time companies started looking at the demand side, which is what's the shape of the job. And that actually brings me to the KDC framework, as you called it, Gavin. I'm going to steal that from you. The knowing, doing, connecting framework. I mean, one of the findings from the research is that, mastery in the modern workplace is distributed. So there are people-to-people interaction, the people-to-machine interactions, and it's all distributed, right? And it resides in a network of people at the end of the day. So as you reshape jobs, to use Phil's point, how should organizations think about this phenomena of something being invisible, other things being visible? And how do you make work and jobs more human-centric? Minley, I know it's a tough one. I hope I'm not putting you on the spotlight with this one, but...
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. So just to give a little bit of my background, over the past 5 years, I have been helping businesses, especially the SME section, to get started on their digital transformation journey in Vietnam. And throughout the 5 years that I have had the experience with the SME, I realized that there is a demand in the training for the upcoming labor, like the junior and the seniors of the universities. So that's why a couple of years ago, I also collaborated with some of the university in Vietnam to create training programs that help students when right after they graduate from university, they will know how exactly their workflows is going to be. It wasn't just like something big like AI or generative AI, but it was just something basic, something like, okay, how do you collaborate with other human beings when you are in the workplace, and in the meantime, how can you leverage technology to do that? So from my point of view, I think that technology will always be a moment that technology will forces us into different directions, and from my own experience so far, it's been positive. I also agree that more and more jobs in the future will be displaced by AI, but at the same time, I think that new roles will also emerge from this as well. So traditional jobs will be transitioning into more exciting jobs, and that's why I believe that. And I also myself, I look at AI as like an enabler rather than a replacement for the future workforce. For example, AI could help us to remove all of the most redundant parts of our everyday life, and so that we can focus on the higher level of thinking. So just for example, just a couple months ago, I was redesigning a what we call the service blueprint for a software as a service company, and I realized that the problem lies in the department of customer support, because many customer support agents are left bridging the gap between a customer who has a high demand and a system that already set them up for failure. So I thought that, okay, that would be where new tech like AI could be adopted to free up the agent time by eliminating all of the repetitive tasks, so that those agents can then be focusing on the human side, focusing on finding real solutions for their customers. And for that use case, we adopted sentimental analysis, so we can analyze every call, every text, and in the meantime, give real-time guidance to the customer support. And also, it will give the customer support agents the relevant resources and context, so that they can transform the way they support their customers. In the end, what the key stakeholder of the company wanted to look at was not the efficiency of the customer support agent, who is no longer looking at how fast they can say sorry to their customer and moving on to the next customer. But right now, they can leverage the technology like AI, and especially the manager of the department, they can now understand their employee better, so that they can create more training programs that are focusing on how to develop a better human side of supporting their customer, not just okay, here is the solution, or sorry, we don't have that solution for you at the moment, and maybe in the next phase of our production cycle we will have that for you, but right now we don't have anything. So from my point of view, in the future is just going to be about the collaboration between the human and the technology, and the companies, the businesses that have leverage it soon enough will have the unfair advantage in the future.
Got it. No, that's very helpful. I agree with you. I think the future is human plus machine. And that's what the workforce of the future is going to look like. But, you know, I know it's very boring to sit there and not be able to ask any questions and just listen to all of us rambling on. So this is your time. For the folks sitting here in the room, you can just raise your hand and ask a question. For the folks who are remote, you know, I hope you've been using Pigeonhole. I know a number of you raised your hand. You can get hold of the Pigeonhole Live QR code. I think there are some questions that have already come in. Okay, let's look at that. Okay, let's ask, this is an interesting question. It got 4 votes, so perhaps it's something that's on everyone's mind. Absence of hollowing out effect on the middle skill labor is surprising to me. What factors or conditions might contribute to the stability of this segment in the face of technological advancements? Gavin, would you like to take this question?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've already touched on this very early on in my sharing, but I'll say a little bit more. I think one of the knowledge gaps that this segment is facing is just simply the lack of awareness on the right set of skills, right? If you recall, I think when ChatGPT came out, like there was a sudden surge in interest in what is this prompt engineering about, and obviously the interest is driven by the salary that this new job commands. But I think we have to be careful about this potentially becoming a mirage, right? Because prompt engineering is not necessarily suitable for all companies wanting to embark on Gen AI, right? That may not be the starting point. So the lack of awareness is a problem to address. I would say early December, that's coming up this year, SG Tech will be launching a Job Skills Insights Report, JSI as we call it. We love acronyms, JSI. Early December, he knows, we love acronyms. JSI is an attempt to share the findings of the 30 companies I mentioned earlier, from Google, Microsoft, to some of the AI-first startups and the SMEs that have embraced this technology as well, collectively coming together to share the insights to address this segment.
Perfect. Thank you. Phil, I think there's a question directed for you. It says, thank you for the keynote. It's hard to summarize 4 years in 40 minutes. You did it in 25, actually. If encouraging corporate business models to be human-centric, where did it go? Yeah. If encouraging corporate business models to be human-centric is key for a wanted future, what lessons can we learn from other countries?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting question about, you know, what can be learnt from other countries, in the sense of, if we look at Finland, if we look at Germany, there are aspects there that we can learn. The biggest problem actually is translation. Is what does that then mean, say, for Singapore or for the UK, like the dual system or occupational benchmarking in Germany, which is, you know, we would say very, very helpful and human-centric in many respects. But trying to move that, say, as I say, to the UK or Singapore is really, really difficult to achieve. You know, if you think about the kind of societal trust in Finland and the institutional kind of support for professional work. You think about the role of teachers, you know, where they've got quite a lot of discretion over what they teach and the curriculum. How does that translate elsewhere? So I think there are very good examples that we can pick up on. And then the question is, so the issue is, what do we learn from it? And so the learning has to be about what's that translation process, and are there aspects that might work, say in a different cultural institutional context, and what precisely are they? So I think the sort of like the need for aspects of experimentation then in a different context is helpful. So I think so the learning is not just about what's out there; it's about how it's then translated.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, because the contexts are so different. There's no way to learn other than by actually piloting it or trying it for yourself. Yeah, agreed. There are a couple of very interesting questions here around what it means for education and for curriculums. And let me read that one out. Where is it gone? Given the potential mismatch between education and job availability, how can we better align educational curriculums with the future job market? Who would like to take that on? Minley?
Yeah, okay.
Sure.
Thank you for the question anyway. One of the funny thing is when I was developing the curriculums to teach the senior and the junior at our universities, my first batch was all the faculties of that universities. So they sat in my courses, and to my knowledge, I found out that okay, even the faculties of the university, they don't know how to use technology to collab with other their colleagues. So I think that the idea that you go out and get education when you were young and go out and work for like 40 or 50 years with that educational skills no longer exists. The thing that we should look at is the skill that I would like to call it learning how to learn, because in the end, what we're trying to do is we're trying to adapt with the changing world. So I think the gap right now between the curriculum at the university and the real labor market is not that big, because I believe that we haven't put any like specific focus on that area yet. So what I would encourage is to go out there and to see that what businesses really want at their future workforce, and then come back to update just a little bit on your curriculum, and that's it.
Wonderful. Shravani, we haven't forgotten you. Are you on mute and speaking?
Yes, I'm on mute, sorry. I would like to add some more to this. See, previously, when computer science is being taught, like years ago, like C, C++, and then people moved on to Python. And right now, if you're designing programs for undergraduate students right now, at this moment, you need to add machine learning and AI to some extent. And still keep in mind, after you graduate, adopting to the corporate and technology is going to be again like a year or two. So there are programs within companies to bridge that gap by rotational programs. But right at the moment, like this fall, if you're a designing program, you need to have an option for every student to take AI to some level. They have to learn it, because they're going to miss out a lot once they start coming into the companies and start working with us. You don't want to feel like, oh, I have no clue that this existed in my world. So given so many education platforms available, like right now, students should be prepped to take on this challenge.
Got it. So you're actually advocating machine learning and AI to be a mandatory course in curriculums.
Yeah, to some extent, they should have an understanding of it. Yes, it will really help. Even if you don't use it, it will open up your thinking to an extent.
Yeah. Shravani, since we are with you, I wanted to ask you a question, I think that was tailor-made for you. It's from Elizabeth Nair, and she says, with technology rushing forward at the speed of innovation, how do we ensure ethics in the corporate, in the technology, and at the individual level is at the forefront of the conversation? This is a $1 million question, but as a practitioner, you probably have some thoughts for us.
This is my favorite topic because I debate with this question every single day. Because I, as somebody who work with AI, I understand the promises, I understand the fallacies, and also the challenges that we have. And well, at least in the US, there are regulations that because so there are in the past there are so many use cases where it hindered employment opportunities for people, or people misclassified as some other race. So, but right now, uh, I think government have to take a huge initiative in this area, enforcing regulations on companies building ML models, and how they are utilizing AI when they're making decisions about life-changing opportunities for people. You know, they affect people a lot. You know, somebody lose out on being a first generation employee in their company. So I think it's the question is how you create a dynamic between create policies and then enforcing them, and then but still keep in mind, AI can do a lot. If you don't notice it, even the engineers who are building it, if they don't pay their due diligence, a lot of things can be missed. So to be very yeah, that's what I think about it. But it's every AI practitioner has the same problem. We think about it every day. How we don't.
And I
Yeah.
think one of the other questions, related questions, was most often regulation has lagged innovation. So somebody is actually asking the question. I think someone here in the room who's asking the question. How do you make sure that regulation is a little more upstream? You know, it anticipates the innovation as opposed to lags it. Phil, do you have a thought on that? It's a very important policy question, I think.
I mean, I'm just picking up on these questions here as well. Just in terms of so people are asking about sort of routine jobs and DNA and such things, and I'd like to respond to
Sure.
those if you don't mind.
Of course.
If that's okay.
Of course.
Because they're asking about the sort of they're asking about DNA of capitalism, right? So the reason for that is because the markets are being shaped in terms of the use of the technologies. So somebody's asking about routine work. You know, to what extent, why hasn't routine work disappeared? And of course, one of the reasons is that companies will target where the costs are highest. So, and where it's easier, because generative AI actually attacks knowledge forms of work rather than those at the bottom. So actually, what we find is it's those in the middle, right, where there's already a combination between knowing and doing, that they're the ones actually who are safest, in a sense. So I think that the question is, how do we then try to get like venture capitalists to in fact invest in things which are not just high profit? How do we change the culture of investment? And how do we, again, it goes back to the job quality thing, how do we maintain the quality of jobs at all levels, I think is a very important thing for us to consider. Sorry, I just picked up those questions, and I don't know whether it feeds.
That's a really important question. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody in the room has a question? Okay. If not, I'm going to steer the questions to a slightly different topic, which is it's about what societies can do more. Very interesting. A high-performing workforce and a good future depends not just on competencies, but traits and dispositions as well. So they're talking about values, and what role does society play? I suppose what role do families play in building those values? Yeah. Gavin?
Yeah. No, I think this goes to the heart of the human-centric approach. Something worth talking about. So grateful for the question. I'll just share my own perspectives, and hopefully panelists can chime in as well. But on this topic, I think something that we haven't yet discussed at this conference anyway, and hopefully the next day we'll also tackle it, is the fact that I think we're facing one of the most complex global problems of our age, of our generation, such as sustainability is a good example, right? So I think one of the ways in which you can bring about more greater consciousness of values or human-centric approach to AI is to try to solve this complex problem together with the use of generative AI, right? It's you solve a complex problem with a complex tool. It's not that difficult, but in the process of doing so, magic happens in that you're forced to collaborate, right? Because right now, many different countries have their own large language models. China, for example, is about 130, over 100 and counting, right? Many countries are coming out with their own LLMs, right? So what they can do is to solve the problem together, bring their scientists, right, or bring their companies, and tackle it together. And that can bring about a greater consciousness of better values, a more human-centric approach. Yeah.
I guess geopolitics is going the other way, though. That's the problem. Yeah. You'd say something?
Yeah, just in terms of values. I mean, we talk the language of skill all the time, don't we? And we talk about social skills. But if you think about your own job, then what makes you committed to it? What makes you do a good job? Is it because you have the skills? You need the skills to do the job. But actually, what makes us do a good job or not is our commitment, our sense of dignity, our sense of respect, our sense of something of value. It's got nothing to do with skill. And we spend too much time talking just about skill without that broader sense of how those skills are being used. And how we develop, I mean, it's an old-fashioned word, character. We don't talk about character very much. And we talk about basically mutual respect on both sides. These are the things that really define productivity. You can have all the technology you like, but if you don't have those basic values, if you don't have those relations, those kind of ideally high-trust relations, you're not going to make much progress. So I think that we spend often too much time talking about skill and too much time talking about technology and not the social context and the individual context, which packages them together and defines really how we then act.
No, beautifully said. As one of my colleagues in academia said, the more the machine revolution takes off, the more the need for the human revolution to catch up. And unfortunately, the human revolution is far behind. We have to catch up and then get ahead. So there's a lot to do in terms of focusing on humanity, human values, and things like that. All right, I think it's been a fascinating and an engaging panel discussion. I'd like to thank my fellow panelists. Shravani, thank you so much. It must be very late there, so appreciate your making the time for us. And I think I'm just going to call this panel discussion to an end. And now, changing my hat, I'm going to suggest that, ladies and gentlemen, you could take a quick poll. Use the QR code on screen. Is there a QR code on screen already? Yes, there is. To just give us your feedback and your views on the issues raised in this panel discussion. And while that happens, we'll just get a photograph of the panel. And then I'll make the next announcement. Go ahead. Yeah, just take it as. Thank you. Yeah. So meanwhile, I think that's the end of the morning session. You can take a quick tea break, refreshments, and we'd like you all to return to the ballroom by 11:05 for the next panel discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you for your attention and time.